Good. How are you?
I am well, thank you. Jamie, it's so good to see you. Like, man, has it been a while? Is it weird for you? Like, I feel like even though we probably haven't actually laid eyes on one another, like physically in 20 some years, right?
Yeah, I think we ran into each other because I thought about this. We ran into each other maybe at a Cinco de Mayo thing.
Okay.
Maybe I
I
want
mean,
to
I like Cinco
say
de Mayo. Anything
we
that
were.
has tacos involved, I'm
I
in.
think, yeah, I think we were college age at that point, and so we
Okay.
were relative. We hadn't seen each other in a while, and I think that was the last time I saw you in person. Yeah.
But my point is, don't you feel like you could pick my kids out of a lineup? I could pick your kids out of a lineup. I've never laid eyes on them. I feel like if I saw you, it would be like no time passed because social media and the internet makes everything super weird, is my point, right?
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah, it
So,
is weird.
but I digress. So, welcome to Make It Make Sense. So, this is just a fun little project where I spend time talking to people that I like in this life and trying to understand and make some sense of a world that really oftentimes does not make sense. And the older I get, I just realize how much more is confusing about the world. And so that is what we do here. And I really appreciate you joining me. So tell me who you are, what you do, what's your story.
Oh, okay. I am Jamie Paredes. I have my own podcast with my
Yeah.
brothers, or two of my three brothers, called Quit Acting Stupid, acting without a G.
Act in.
And
Yeah.
acting, yeah, it's because we're hip like that.
Okay. I like it. I like it.
Yeah, no, we I guess it was originally supposed to be like a parenting podcast, kind of a alternative deal, like because I think the first we've always been looking for something to do together,
Okay.
whether it's you know business related or what. I mean, we're just like, you know what, we get together every Sunday at my parents' house and we just rip on each other. We just kind of we chat about everything. We gossip, the whole deal. And I was like, yeah, why don't we start something like that? Start a podcast. And I think I was watching Good Morning America one time, and they had a parenting expert, and it just sounded so not what we would do. Like it sounded like the people that we make fun of on Sundays. Just
Okay.
like a very, very by the book, like what somebody would write if someone was writing a book about
I would
parenting.
imagine if they put them on TV,
Yeah,
yeah, it's going to be pretty polished, I imagine.
right. Yeah, it just caught my ear. I'm like, oh my God, we need to kind of give a perspective, from, because everybody needs a guy's perspective. Yeah, but we don't get enough of that, right? Um,
But
but
it's morphed. Is it really about parenting anymore?
that's what I was gonna get to.
No.
It's kind of devolved, I guess, into just
Okay.
like we're just this is we have conversations like we do on Sundays. It's just
Yeah.
because we would get on so many different tangents and forget what the original topic was. It's like, you know what? Let's just get on here. Half the time we start it up and they're just like hit record. We'll just we'll
I
just
love it
talk.
though. That's great that you guys have that, close a bond that you can just kind of get on and chop it up and not really have a
Yeah,
script. And I
yeah.
think
I mean,
the real question is, why don't you like that last brother? Or why doesn't he like you guys?
that was the joke. Yeah, that was
That's
the
really
joke.
why we're here today. And here he is. Bring him out. I'm just kidding. Not really.
No, because it was I think when we originally pitched it, it was, like I said, a parenting podcast. He's like, yeah, I'm a new parent. He kind of just he's like, yeah, I'll bow out of this one. And so we just kind of made up the what was it like on the Fresh Prince when they switched the moms. um and it was like, we'll pull one of those, you just you
Aunt
know
Viv?
yeah, and that's it. Yeah. So no, we just kind of joke with them about that. But and any more mouths on that show, and you
Does
would
he
never
guess?
hear anybody.
Does he show up at all?
No, but he's going to be soon. So
Okay.
yeah, you'll yeah, it's we like I said, it's just like what we do on Sundays. We gossip, um we're a little off color, but and then we'll bring some of our family on. It's probably just our family and friends that watch anyway. So
I
Yeah,
mean,
right.
that's where we all begin. But good
Yeah,
for you. I think
yeah,
it's fun. Like I said, I listened to the baseball episode the other day. It's baseball season's upon us. Kansas City just had that voting was yesterday, right? You
oh,
guys lost that
yes,
you're not going to pay for the stadium. And so my brother is
yeah,
very concerned that you guys are going to lose the Royals. And so I think it was very apropos for the season. But
yeah. And I think that's why originally we talked about it. We were like, yeah, well, and I don't even think we got to that topic yet because my brother Rudy's pretty fired up about it, and I agree too. It's like, people can't see the forest for the trees. I mean, uh, yeah, it's all, everybody's out to like, we don't want to give billionaires money, things like that. And it's like, but you don't see the greater good for the city. And then kind of along the topic that we were talking about with, you try to mention it to somebody and they just fire right back. Like
yeah,
I think there was a time when my cousin had posted something on Facebook uh, about the vote, and my brother Rudy had responded, with his thoughts like, no, I think people should vote yes, blah blah. Well, one of my cousin's friends just jumped in and started firing away like one of those keyboard warriors, just like, you're an idiot, and that area of town is so special, and this and that, and it was just like, and I'm reading this and I'm laughing because I love to see my brother sweat, like because it's something that we rip on each other all the time. We're not one of those, hey brother, I love you, and we're just like, you're an idiot, we go back and forth,
did you
and so to
say
see
quit
somebody.
acting stupid?
Exactly. No,
Okay.
that was from actually from my parents. They would tell us that when we were little. Quit acting stupid. So, but that's where that came from. But yeah, no, they would. This guy just fired away, and I was like, who? Like, so I jump in, just like because I was just sitting back with my popcorn, and I jump in and just kind of just I didn't really care, I didn't care what he was saying, but just trying to poke the guy. Like, look, man, you're kind of being an a-hole. And so I'm going to say something completely against what are one, because it was the Crossroads district. I don't know if you've been there in Kansas
Yep.
City, or how, yeah. It's very artsy. And so they were all about protecting the arts district, this and that. And, I'm just like, go in there with I'll just bulldoze the whole thing. And so the guy gets fired. I mean, I'm like, I'm just messing with him. But yeah, but people get so touchy and negative and just want to just fire away, and who cares, if I know
Well,
this person or not.
it's a great segue into kind of what we're discussing today. Um, I personally feel like, I don't know, I feel like social media might be the root of all evil, but I think the internet is definitely a catalyst into kind of just it's such a blemish on like humanity. Like we're not becoming better, we're not really becoming smarter, we're just becoming perhaps meaner. And so, I am interested to hear because you have just started into you've become more like at our age, it's not very typical to increase your online presence, right? Like this is kind of an
Right.
interesting territory for you. Like usually there are a lot of people our age that are bowing out of social media and things like that. Like I always say I'm not able to do that because of like how important it is for my career, but definitely increasing your social media presence is not the norm. And so here we are, and all of a sudden you're 17 or so podcasts in. And so you do have people that are seeing you now that you hadn't before, and or that hadn't before, and somehow the algorithm is feeding them your content, right? If you're doing it Facebook's way or Instagram's way.
Right.
And so you have to have encountered some more of this now. Have you found yet any of your online trolls or people that stop by just for their dose of hate
I
on the internet?
haven't I haven't yet.
Okay.
But I am like, I think I was joking with you earlier. It's like it's mostly just our friends and family at this point, because I think we're still kind of our tens and tens of listeners or viewers. But I fully expect, at some point, because people I think are, I guess it's like road rage where you're kind of, it's that anonymity factor where
Yeah.
you're in a car, probably with tinted windows, nobody can really see you. And so you can be a completely different person. Like you could be some meek, you know, person in real life just having a conversation, but you get behind the wheel, that person does something you don't like, and
Sure.
you're gonna, yeah, you next thing you know, you're cutting them off, something that you wouldn't normally do to somebody. Like if you were standing in line, you wouldn't just jump in front of them. So I think people feel a lot more comfortable with that anonymity, and really, I mean, when you think about it, if you're talking about like, you Facebook, Twitter, I refuse to call it X, Twitter, um, I mean, your name's on it. So, I mean, you're technically not all that anonymous, but you still feel comfortable. For some reason, you feel empowered to do, something that you wouldn't normally do in real life, to people that you don't know at all. I have, like I said, I haven't encountered that, um, but I see it in other places.
It,
And two, I don't really, the reason we started getting, increasing our presence was for me anyway. We kind of, my brothers and I kind of did it for different reasons, but I was really doing it for myself. Like I originally, I didn't care who watches. I didn't care if 4 people watched or nobody watched. It was really in case I got hit by a bus. I want to, I want my daughters, being 7 and 5, my younger daughters, to know who their dad was. And now I have a trove of, 16 hours of video that they could go and watch and say, oh yeah, that was my dad, that type of thing. So I didn't originally, I guess I didn't even think about what people would think
well,
about it.
so I've done this. I'm by no means an internet sensation, but I've done it for a little bit longer than you have. And it's interesting. And we have some, because of the business and some of the people that we have in the employ of the company do it for this, make it make sense as well. And so I get to see pretty cool things from our, social media manager that will say like, oh, you have new listeners this week. You had 2 people in New Zealand. And I'm like, how is that? Like it really is interesting to me how the internet kind of pushes content out. I
Sure.
think that is fascinating. But what I can tell you, I'm still amazed. And I still, as much as I know, as a rational, uh, competent, reasonable adult, that I'm probably never going to lay eyes on any of these people. Their opinion really doesn't matter. Like I'm never going to see them, but I still find myself bothered, way less now because I honestly just try most of the time not to read the comments. But occasionally I will find myself in a place where my stupid phone alerts me that there's a new some kind of notification and I can't help myself. But you have to just not read the comments because it is always kind of nefarious. And it's just the people that stop by just to say something hateful. It's shocking to me, really. The other day, for instance, I had recorded the last one, and it was right, I don't know if it was right after a chemo treatment, but she was like complaining, saying, just spewing some hate that I had gum in my mouth. Well, the mint from the gum will like settle my stomach because mint,
Uh-huh.
soothing. So I'm like, well, bitch, like, just so you know, like, and you know, and I went like total mom mode, like everybody is going through something that you don't know anything about. So like just if
Right.
you don't have anything nice to say, just keep scrolling. But it's amazing to me that people just don't do it. And
Right.
it is an actual there's a psychological term for it. The internet making us meaner? Online disinhibition effect. Like that's the name of this. It's
Sure.
like
Yeah.
because you have the anonymity of being a safe distance away, people are more likely to say something. But the problem is that people are being meaner and opening, like we as a species are more inclined to and like engage in the negative than we are the positive. So we remember the negative more. And you can think about this from your own life, right? Like if you have 100 people that say something nice to you about something you've done,
Oh, sure.
and
Yeah.
one person that says something awful, you latch onto and focus all of your energy on the one person that said something hateful, because
Right.
innately, and it was like a survival mechanism as we were like just through evolution, we are trained to focus and engage more on the negative than the positive, because it would have kept us from dangers in the wild or whatever. Like we would remember being bitten by a dog instead of approaching a dog that we don't know, kind of thing. And so
Hmm.
we as humans are built this way, which is terrifying. And the internet now is just amplifying it, and it's making us all more toxic and terrible. And it's all the time. And I think if you haven't experienced it yet, like it's kind of a blessing and a curse when it happens, right? Because
Yeah.
Bill Maher said on his podcast, he said, you know, haters are kind of like bacteria. Like you need a healthy amount of them, because if you don't have any haters, then you know you're absolutely not relevant. Like nobody cares,
Yeah,
right?
that makes sense. Yeah, no, absolutely.
But
Uh,
like, and maybe you're better equipped for it. Maybe you have thicker skin. I don't know that you do though, because you told me a few minutes ago that you do, even though you don't want to, you care what people think. You
oh,
want to know
sure.
what people think.
Absolutely. And I think maybe an older or younger version of myself would be, engaging that person, and, going back and forth. And then, I think as I've gotten to where I am now, I think it's more of I'm able to look at it like, take a step back and think, well, you're listening to me. You can badmouth whatever, how I look on camera, or how, all the that I, how I stutter or whatever, but you're listening to me, and I guess that's my way of just kind of coping with, it's not going to get me fired up because you are sitting in your basement, you know, uh, and using your free time to hear what I had to say. I don't. You're thinking of me. I'm not thinking of you while I'm doing this. And so that
It's
kind of.
way too healthy. You can't really be that separated from it. I mean, I I
Well, like I
admire
said,
it.
I wasn't
I envy
always
it.
that way.
I envy it. So then
I mean,
what makes you engage in the trolling situation you were in?
it, I do have. I have a. Trust me, I can get sucked in, and it's for whatever reason. I have I have a desire to let you know that you're wrong. Like, not in necessarily a mean, like, it makes me uncomfortable that you are wrong or ignorant about something. It bothers me. Like, I would feel like I need to let you know, hey, you're wrong. Like and it would just eat at me. And I remember I would not be able to get to sleep sometimes if something somebody said or typed on, on social media, and I couldn't let it go. And at this point, I'm like, well, you know what? I'm giving them pleasure, like knowing that they've been heard. Now I'm sure, other people have probably interacted with them. They get their rocks off by, you know,
Well, that's
getting
what the
other
trolls
people.
want. They want any kind of engagement whatsoever.
Right,
Right?
right, right. And I'm like, you know what? I can't, I can't allow that person to have the satisfaction of knowing that somebody was fired up about what they said. Like, I'd rather them not know that I was listening or reading their post, or, what have you. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I just think any engagement, and I'm like, I'm not saying this because I'm not guilty, because there are times when I will just go fire off at people because they're just nasty, and I'm like, why are you like, what is broken inside of you? And like the Christian side of me like is like pray for them, like all that nonsense, but really you're pissed. You're like, no, they're being an asshole for absolutely no reason. And
Right.
like I think for me, like, yeah, as much as it sucks and I don't like it, and people go for the jugular, they say they comment on things that you can't really control necessarily. Like, some guy on an influencer's page, she had, she's British. They don't care as much about braces, and like they're not American in that way. Like we are way the other side of it, right? And
Right.
so she hadn't had braces and her bottom teeth were crooked. And I get it. My bottom teeth were super crooked. I had braces, like I understand. And it's not something that at in her 30s she's probably fixing, and she's probably self-conscious about it because she probably has been for most of her life. And he says like something along the lines of like, your bottom teeth look like they got confused or something. And I'm like, why did you stop to just say that hateful shit? Like, did it make you
Yeah.
feel better? Do you
Yeah.
feel better about yourself because of it? And that's the part that where I really struggle. And so I
Yeah.
will fire back.
It I totally, that would be a situation where I would fire back. The, I think what fires me up more, and I don't know if it's fired up would be the right word, but knowing that there is somebody out there, like that person is out there. And I always have to bring my younger daughters up
Yeah.
when I think about, I'm like, those people are out there for my daughters could possibly interact with this type of person. They could be at a bar, and this person or somebody like them that would do something like that could come up and talk to them and have a conversation with them. It makes my skin crawl to think that there's people out there that my daughters have to deal with,
But in
that
person,
are like
they
them.
would probably not do any of those things. Like that's actually
Right, not right
point,
away,
right?
right
No,
away.
but I mean, the point is like people will say a host of awful things on the internet that they would never say in person. It's why they have a fake account. It's why they do it from a page that's private. It's like
Right.
they're the biggest pansies that there are, but they are vicious because they can be on the internet and there aren't any real repercussions, but they won't be in person.
But even if they just do it on the internet and don't do it in person, I think you would agree that they still have something going on, because they're somebody who's willing to do that, even if it's just on the
Oh,
internet, has
100%.
something going on.
It's always
And
about them. It's not about you. Like,
so
and
they,
I think I heard it described today, a different situation, but that they were so hurt and traumatized themselves that they had to go out and be mean so they could give some of it away. They could like spread it around.
yeah,
And that's so sad. Like, and so when I fire back at these people, because I fired back at this guy, and I'm like, I'm guessing either super ugly or really tiny pencil dick. Like, I don't, one of these things is wrong, because why are you being such an asshole to this
yeah.
girl for no reason? And so, like, I did fire back, and it almost makes me feel like where you should pray for them, and like that's what is the right thing to do. But in the moment, you're like, no, I want you to be hurt too because you're such an asshole for no reason.
Right. Yeah, yeah. It I mean, that person could be a cook in a restaurant that you're sitting at a table, and they could, somebody who's that messed up in the head that would take pleasure in hurting somebody for no reason is the same person who's spitting in food or what. And
Okay.
that these are the things that go on in
Yes.
my head.
Yes. But the problem is you're dressing it up like it's a really damaged one-off individual. It's
Uh-huh.
not. It's so many people. It's so
Right.
common. It's like actually like to me it's such an issue because there are so many, like every person, I promise, at least every girl for sure, has a fake account. Now what they do with this fake account is depends. They might just internet stalk people and like be nosy, or they might be out trolling and being mean, but like everyone has it. And so it's so common that we're acting like it's this one-off person who's this like they just are an undiagnosed, they need to be
Right.
in an institution, but that's not the case. It's everywhere, and it's everyone, and it's becoming more and more prevalent. And to me, the real like concerning issue is that social media as a whole is about, they want to monetize it, like TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, they're all about like how can we make money from these platforms, right? Well, in order to sell ads, it's about engagement. And it's like the bad little kid at school, right? It's like good attention or bad attention, they just want attention. So even if they have to be naughty to get attention, they'll take
Right.
it because you're paying
Oh,
attention.
absolutely.
It's the
Yeah.
same thing with engagement, right? It's like good or bad engagement, we don't care as needing to sell this advertising space. So we are going to look at engagement, period, as a positive thing. And we're going to use the algorithm to push that further to more people because it had engagement. And what it more often than not is the negative stuff on the internet that gets pushed out further. And then you have these viral, this went crazy and it had all these comments and people retweeted and all this stuff. And it's the negative stuff. And people are
Yeah.
4 to 6 times more likely to share negative content than positive content. That's terrifying. Like if you're scared for
Yeah.
your kids, that's what's to be scared about. It's not that they
Yeah.
might
Yeah.
encounter a random cook who like spits their food. It's they're being inundated with negative content. It's being pushed out more to them. If anyone engages it, they're more likely to see it. And then if they engage it, they're more likely to get more of it. Like
Yeah.
this is such a vicious cycle. And we're all like caught up in it. Like
Oh, absolutely.
we're stuck. And it's, to me, it's terrifying. And I think the system we might be pitted against us. Like it's rigged for our ultimate demise and failure, because this is how these social media platforms work.
Yeah, and I think it's even more. I think it's even more concerning when you factor in, like teenagers or young teenagers that are new to, all of a sudden they have this phone in their hand with all of this, like you said, this negativity that's just constantly, filtering in and out of their feeds and things like that. And all they do is they're at the mercy of whatever comes up next when they scroll down, when they scroll, if it's more and more negativity, if, you're talking about a young teenager that maybe already has, insecurities or, who knows what happened
Just
to them at
hormones,
school today.
just like the shit you deal with as a teenager. Like it's
Yeah.
already so much.
Yeah, and then to come to just at any time, really, and now I guess they can have their phones in school or whatever. I don't know. I couldn't imagine that happening back in our day, but um, to constantly have, when they're supposed to be at school learning and and developing relationships, things like that, and they have their phone with them with this negativity right at their palm, just 2 feet away, a foot away, from them at all times. Um, yeah, it's very. I think about this stuff all the time. Like I'm constantly. That's the that's the stuff that keeps me up. Thinking about how that's going to affect, um, you know, their future and just, gosh, what I, we were watching. Gosh, what was it? There was. Oh, I was reading an article about gambling in on sports. Because that's becoming more legal in more states and things like that. And there was an article about there some of the bench players, in basketball that get in at at the end of the games or whatever, and when the scores already the game's pretty much already decided. It's just a matter of what the point
Running up.
spread's going to be.
Yeah.
Yeah, and when they do something that affects somebody who's gambled on the game, I guess these people are reaching out directly because with social media, I'm sure all these players have their own Twitter accounts or whatever, and they reach out directly to them and just MF them, and you need to die. This all because they lost their bet, because this guy who rarely gets in the game is probably just so excited to be on the court finally. And if he misses a shot or whatever, and it affects this the score, then he's gonna get
Well, I mean,
MF all day.
that's just the problem with that's about accessibility, right? Like, I mean, now even you like kids today, I sound 100 years old, but like kids today, if people meet at a bar or whatever, they don't exchange phone numbers, they exchange Instagram handle, right? Like
Uh-huh.
they'll say, here, what's your Instagram? And they'll send a request and they'll communicate that way. And so they'll like slide into their DMs, and like that is how they'll start their new like relationship or whatever. And so it's so prevalent, it's so like accessible. I wouldn't even have to necessarily know that much about a person, except if you got to their first and last name, and you can probably sniff them out on Instagram,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
And so that accessibility is a little bit terrifying. So that's something we wouldn't necessarily have had to contend with growing up. But like if you think about the internet, right? The internet came around really and was accessible in the early 2000s. So if you're talking only really 20 years or so of the internet, we there's still like the actual effects, the long-term effects of this thing, we don't really even know yet, because we're in our lifetime,
Yeah.
we've seen a time without it, and now we're dealing with the ramifications of it being part of our everyday existence, right?
Yeah.
So I think as the studies are just now happening, and some of the scary stuff to come out of it, and like along this topic of like the anonymity factor and how people like go to being rude and they say things that they wouldn't say, like polite society is no more, like they just kind of fire off, and the Karens of the world, and you see it happening all the time, like where people would be maybe slightly more reserved, they're not, they're just flying off the handle, and they're Karening out at Starbucks all the time, because we've all like lost all sense of what decency is. And I think that it's part of this, but like ultimately the studies are showing now that being mean in a virtual world actually will start to spill over into your real life, like because you are so unhinged. If you're unhinged, we all are kind of unhinged on the internet, that will spill over, and you will start to sort of speak differently and mistreat the people in your lives. And ultimately, ramping up, like ratcheting up the negativity that you're exposed to because people are so nasty on social media, that leads to a lower life expectancy, because you've ratcheted up the negativity, and having negativity in anything is going to make it's going to slow it down, right? Like that's
Oh,
all
yeah.
this motivation and manifestation and positivity, like it all sounds kind of woo woo, but there's truth to that. Like
Oh, absolutely.
if you are a positive person, you are going to have a better outcome. But we're now so inundated with all of this negativity every time we open a screen, that it's actually leading to lower life expectancy, and it's spilling over into our real lives, and we can't like separate it. And that's really terrifying. Like if
Yeah.
you want to worry
Yeah.
about your kids, this is the stuff to worry about. It's
Yeah.
crazy.
No, it's funny because I was you'll laugh, but I was watching it was an interview with an exorcist. And it was, I get sucked into some weird stuff. But so they had this priest on, and he was talking about negativity, and how that is what I guess these demons latch on to
Yeah, I
when
believe that.
they're possessing
Yeah.
somebody. Yeah, that it's the negativity. Like they want us to hate ourselves, and and I'm thinking at the same time, I'm like, yeah, this is all the stuff that you're seeing in uh and I'm not a media is the devil person, but but yeah, like you see commercials that, make you feel bad about, or make you think you can better yourself by using this product or whatever. And I'm like, yeah, I mean, that is, like you said, that cycle of negativity is always there. And so if you're looking at that and feeling bad about yourself, I mean, that's, negativity that you're bringing in. And, it's just, it, I can see how it would affect your life expectancy. I mean,
Yeah,
it's just,
it will shorten your lifespan,
yeah,
like all
absolutely.
studies. And like I'm saying, like the point being, we're only 20 some, less than 30 years into this thing. So we don't really, and social media is even newer than that, right? Like I think I
Right. Yeah.
got my first ever social media, like, well, I mean, I guess it was MySpace, but I wasn't really a big MySpace person, but I had my Facebook account in like 2008. So like it's not, it hasn't been around that long for us to really understand what the ramifications are. And I think for kids, it's even scarier, right? Because there is something about speeding up. Like I even see like my 10-year-old daughter, because of her exposure to on the internet and all the things that she gets to see that she wouldn't see if it weren't around. Sephora and makeup and glam
Right.
and like all of this. Like I feel like she's zooming toward being a teenager faster.
Yeah.
And like that is largely because of the internet. But I think, they will not understand. No one now, maybe there'll be the one-off parent that like really shelters their child and puts them in a bubble. But for the most part, there will be no more generations that don't grow up understanding what it's like to have this in their life, right? And there
Sure.
definitely
Yeah.
was a simplicity about when we grew up that, come home when the street lights are on and go outside and play and get dirty, and like it was a different time. But like there will never be that innocence again. Like
Right.
every future generation will have this involvement, have exposure to things that they wouldn't have otherwise. And where I think the internet is posed as this thing that's going to make us smarter, we have all this information at our fingertips because it has been so morphed and spun. Like it's an election year. So you will start to see the algorithm feeding you things that will incite you about the other side because that's what gets engagement, right?
Right.
So you're going to be inundated with negative information because that's what humans are taught to latch onto. So you're going to hear a lot of terrible stuff about whatever the opposite side of you is because your
Sure.
phone's paying attention, and it will put it in front of you to incite you further and to try to get engagement.
And think of
That's
how
scary.
much yeah. I mean, you mentioned the internet's only been around for, 20, 30 years, whatever. I think of how much it's changed, how quickly it's changed in just that short amount of time. Like, I mean, just in the last presidential election where you might see a meme or something, or something that says what so and so did, or whatever. Well, now with AI, you can actually see pretty authentic looking pictures of somebody doing something that you're like, oh, well, it used to be you would just read it. You'd be like, oh, so and so voted this way, or and oh, they're a terrible person. And now you can actually see a picture of somebody doing something horrible, and you're like, oh, well, I actually see that now, and so I even believe it that much more strongly. That person, because hey, I can see him. Gosh, I who knows what they can come up with how pictures can be doctored now to where you can't tell. And so I'm thinking, oh, so and so got caught in a pretty doing something pretty
Curious
terrible, and I can see
situation.
it right there. Yeah.
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 Well,
So
so I think, I talked about the system being rigged against us. Like I do think that, especially with social media, even Google, you hear that like you will get different Google results based on your geographic location. Like they will manipulate what you're fed based on like a regional output. Like, so
Hmm.
the answer in Texas might be different than the answer to the same question in Missouri. That's
Wow.
wild.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
but here's something that I think, like, where I think the system is rigged against us. Users' increased tendency to share negative emotions inflates exposure compared to the proportion of the content that was actually produced with a negative spin. So like, because like the the content is what it is. It might be created and there wasn't a negative intent. And I see this like with our clips from our podcast all the time, where the way that it gets edited and cut up, and I think some of it's done purposely for the same reason. Like the editor will say, well, this is kind of controversial, so it will get people talking, right? And we want engagement. So like they'll chop it up a certain way and people will go and comment and they will assume, and they'll get ugly, and they'll assume that I'm saying one thing, or and it's the drawback of hearing a small snippet of a conversation always. Like you're
Yeah.
gonna form an opinion on a very small sample of like what actually the conversation was. But it's done for like for views and ratings, and I get it. But there may have been no ill intent, nothing negative said, but because the way that it's clipped, it's put out and people start responding to it negatively, so it will go bigger, go viral in a lot of cases and whatever. And so the negative content that ends up coming out of it was never the intent of the creator. Like they were making something pure, but
Sure.
these things get manipulated. And because the algorithm grabs onto that and says, well, people like this and we need to put this in front of more people, so then we can get advertisers to like advertise here. Like it's just, again, we're in this vicious cycle. And I've seen it like on such a small scale from what we do, because there are
Hmm.
times when I'm like, that's not even what I was saying. And you people are attacking me. And there will be something that all of a sudden it's getting, because it had some comment activity, and oftentimes most of it's ugly, it'll have 7 times more views than your last reel. And so all of a sudden you have something with thousands of views and you're like, well, shit, like it's doing what it's supposed to, but in
Right.
such a negative way and in a way that it wasn't intended, and it's been manipulated by an algorithm. So it has nothing to do with me. And it's that the internet and social media are chock full, like where the content creators are doing something positive and the way that it's cut, it ends up being negative and people are likely to share it.
Yeah, because
It's
you're not going to be near as likely to comment on something that made you feel good, or at least I don't. I mean, maybe you do. I don't know, but like if I watch something or read something and like, oh, that was a nice story, then I'm just I'm hey, I take that win and I scroll on.
so you're the
But
same then. You only comment when it's negative. You don't ever say anything positive.
well, like I said, I don't really comment negative. I'll comment, well, if it's one of my brothers, I'll give them crap, but not like not hateful. I rarely I'm a light guy. I'm a light whore, like whore. Yeah, I just like go on, that type of thing. I don't usually comment, period, but I can see, I guess, uh, other people. I can see how when they comment, it's not necessarily going to be, oh great, unless it's one of those, oh how cute, one of those standard, comments. It's going to be
No,
something negative.
and I didn't do the research to see, I should have looked this up, but to see if the people who are commenting, like men and women, if there's a disparity, like if men are more apt to comment something negative or not. Like I would might naturally, I would think that women would be more likely to say positive things, although women are vicious. I mean, I wish that we all like lift each other up and be a
Right.
sister.
Yeah.
Like, but that's kind of bullshit because women are some of the most vicious, like, and I know that. but I just wonder what that would look like if men are more likely, if women are more likely, if it has no bearing at all, like
Yeah.
what it all means. Um,
See, I know my positive, like my positive, eh, I guess liking somebody's post or their picture or whatever is my positive comment, where it's kind of more of a head nod, as a guy. It's like, hey, I saw it, looks cool, and then I move on. But it got and two, like I said, I maybe at one time I probably got a little hateful, but anymore, if somebody does, says something that, I step back and like, man, that guy's an idiot. Um, I I really, if it's somebody that I may encounter that I know, somebody I know, not I'm not talking about a random stranger. I'm talking about like maybe a friend of mine. I just know that if this topic comes up, I know that this guy is not somebody I actually take serious. Like I don't really, I'll listen to his viewpoint, but I don't respect it. I don't think he's very knowledgeable. I think it's very, you know what I mean? Like if it's one of
I
those
get it. And
extreme
I think
viewpoints.
it's so brilliant of you. And I'm so envious. I know that I'm exactly what the trolls want because I do get fired up and I'll be like, I will fire back. And like, so I mean, I get it. And I think it's a very healthy like perspective, but I also don't think it's the common or the norm. I think so. Matt Rife, that young comedian who almost looks like he's AI generated, like he's really pretty. This guy. So
I'm still not convinced that he's a real person, but
yeah, he looks like he's uh yeah, like
he
a
came
bot.
out of nowhere. He came out of nowhere. I
Well,
never heard.
but so
But go ahead.
he was saying, and I agree. He said, there was some troll that said something, and he's like, I think shame on you. Like, if anyone was brave enough to get out and create content and like brave enough to put that out in front of people, like there's a special place in hell for you if you're gonna go and kind of shit on that because like that takes a lot of courage and you're just being an like class A level asshole. And I
Right.
I do think that there's truth to that, but this is not like this is a tale as old as time. Like if someone was really talented in an instrument, kids would cut them up at school. If someone was really extra beautiful, they would be mean to them. So this is just what people do, but it's just so amplified and the reach is so far because of the World Wide Web. Like
Yeah.
it's
I mean, it pulls everything together. Like like you did a show on bullying and things like that. Like it brings, those type of people want to have that power. Like I was able to say something that really got to you. And so, that's where they get their fix. I mean, it all boils down to, I was able to do that
any
to
kind of
you.
attention.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, absolutely. And
So the question for you then is like, when will your kids be able to get devices?
oh, uh-huh. Um,
That's the first part.
okay, go ahead.
No, go
Can
ahead.
we answer? Okay.
Yeah,
Now, I guess you have to define get devices. Now, technically,
they have devices.
my daughter has my old phone that doesn't have a SIM. She can't, call, text, her, and she's 7, but she only has it to play music in her room. So she connects it to the
Okay,
Bluetooth
so
speaker
that
in her
doesn't.
room.
When will
Yeah,
they get a device that can
that they
get
can
them to
actually
the internet?
communicate
That
with
they can
social
get
media
into the
on it
internet?
and everything.
Well, I don't know, just the internet in general, because the internet's its own beast, and then social media is like the next level.
I would say, and only because I heard somebody say, and I think it was maybe a doctor on TV had kind of given a suggestion of like 16. I realize that's probably not realistic. It's probably like 14 or 15. Um, but I guess I'd have to gauge her maturity level at that
Even
point.
14 and 15, I think you're going to have trouble with. And I'll tell you
You
why.
think so?
Because we all do. Like you start to balance or trade off is having like a GPS monitoring on my child. Does that trump not
Yes.
like keeping them from social media? And so like we all have fallen into this trap because that's the trade-off. Like I want to
Yeah.
know and like come for me, the internet, because here they come. Like you could have a watch and you could do all these other things and you're a shitty mom. And like I don't really care. Like at the end of the day, I I succumbed and I really wish that I had delayed it. Like I kind of got worn down. It's like that old adage that like by the
Right.
time you get to the third kid, you're just like, fuck it. I'm
Sure.
like, let's do whatever. I don't care. Like she wore me down.
Yeah,
But
I would microchip my kid if I could. And that's how strongly I feel about having those tracking, because I the absolute worst thing that could happen is my daughter getting snatched, or any of
I did
no.
see something brilliant. If you want to keep with this 14, 15, 16 thing you got going, that you can, I saw something the other day that said, like, you take their shoe and they cut a part of their shoe out, like the sole of their shoe, and they deposited an air tag, like an Apple air tag,
Uh-huh.
like that you would put in your luggage onto their kid, and they GPS tracked them that way as opposed to giving them a phone. So I'm sure where there's a will, there's a way. I'm
Yeah, that's
sure of it.
hardcore.
But like, I think you will, as you get, and you've got a ways to go, but I think you'll, that number will probably start to come down and you'll probably succumb because
Uh,
all their friends have it and they will just, they wear you out. Like they wear you out.
well, I think the more pressing thing right now is YouTube. She's kind of discovered that, and she could access it. I think she knows how on our TV. And so I'm like, oh, I'm not ready for that yet. Because I mean, just knowing that there's all kinds of stuff that she could just flip on without me being in the room and not knowing. Um, that kind of freaks me out a bit. More so, obviously, the social media down the line a little bit, but
So
that's something that I'm
when
kind of encountering.
that's part two of the question. So what about social media? When do they get to have social media?
Ugh, uh, yeah. Again, I'd have to gauge how responsible yeah, I'm making up stuff
Bullshit.
now. Yeah,
Baloney.
it's whenever she bats her eyes at me, and
Yeah. Yeah. So you'll be in the same pit that the rest of us are in. But I mean, like, hey, at the end of the day, none of it makes sense. Like it still doesn't make sense, even though we're attempting to. But I think just having the conversation and being aware of it is the first step to us being able to like try to just be aware of it and combat it potentially with our kids, with myself. I mean, like I said, having more of a presence, dealing with just mean people for no reason all the time. I'm never the person, I just would never stop and write something nasty to a stranger.
right, yeah,
I
it's just
just wouldn't. Like,
yeah.
it's not in my DNA. And somebody's probably going to come with something where I wrote something mean, which I just don't think that it's just not me. Like I don't believe in putting that out in the universe, but
Yeah.
sadly, man, a lot of people do.
Yeah, no, at my age, I don't get any pleasure out of that. I would rather be taking a nap than stressing out about you, you
But there are
complaining about me.
people that is their pastime. There are
Yeah,
people that is their unwind.
there is
My
just
brother kind of admitted, I didn't really pin him down about it on that bullying episode, but he said basically he sometimes takes some pleasure in trolling. And I'm like, and this is a registered nurse. He's an educated person. He's got great opinions and such a great
right.
mind. And I'm like, this is how you're going to spend your time. Like,
Yeah,
but he's not alone. He's actually quite the norm. And that's
yeah,
the part that is kind of gross to
yeah.
me.
I think I contradicted myself a little bit because I do take pleasure in joking and getting somebody fired, like not being like completely hateful. Like when I think I mentioned the stadium issue or whatever, and that guy, and I was just like, this guy's really into this area. He doesn't want it torn down. And I mentioned bulldozing it, just kind of like just kind of jab it, but not anything serious, like not like you need to die,
But
and that whole
it never escalated to that because like
not
like a
I
lot of
love
these things are people writing something to see if they can incite you, and then
right.
like when you do, they continue to feed it, and then it's the game and you're playing into it, and like that's where I'm weak, because my brother said to me, like, Lori, you're doing exactly what they want you to do. Don't say anything. But it's so hard. And you're like, but I've got a zinger and I don't know what to say. So like
Thrift store. Yeah,
we are part of the problem. If we engage at all, we're part of the problem. But you'll see it's a blessing and a curse. It's like what Bill Maher said, like, you've arrived when they care enough to say hateful shit to you. And that's just
yeah,
the world that we live in. So
yeah, yeah.
well, okay. So one final question, not related. But I ask everyone this at the end of our time together. If you had one piece of advice that you could give to your younger self that would have potentially changed your path or turned it all around, what would that piece of advice have been?
I would say to I I find as you know, being my age that I have a lot of regrets about things that I either didn't try, maybe didn't give my full attention to, that I would say that like do everything, give everything your best shot,
Give it your all.
because when right, and it sounds really cheesy, but
No.
but something that is really that might be really important to you down the line. Because like I get to my age, like man, I mean something as trivial as I wish I would have maybe not thought, not been chasing girls in high school and maybe focus more on the joy I got out of playing football, that type of, instead of being, had my mind over here with this teenage stuff. I enjoyed playing football. Why didn't I focus on that more? And so now here, the older Jamie is like, man, things maybe could, not Uncle Rico type deal, but what I'm saying, like, just kind of, yeah, just
Don't half-ass
focusing on
things.
things. Right,
Yeah.
right. Yeah, don't have regrets when you're older,
Yeah.
type thing.
Okay.
Yeah,
I'll take it. I think that's good. I mean, I think don't live with regret, but I think, we
yeah.
all do the sliding doors thing. Like if I'd made
Oh,
this
sure.
one decision differently, well, how would it have turned out? So I can appreciate that. But
Right.
uh, hey, at least you are not half-assing things in your adult life. Like
I,
that's a win
I'm
there,
faking
right?
it. I'm faking it as best I can.
Yeah. Well, this was fun. I mean, I appreciate your opinion. You'll have to message me as soon as the haters come, because they will. Like it just like it's
Well, now
like
I'm gonna be prepared.
you'll be
I
prepared. Well, my
you
advice is just don't read the comments. Just don't read the
uh
comments. Like don't open yourself up to it, because they say you should not ever take criticism from someone you wouldn't ask for advice. Like,
right, yeah.
so that's really how to think of these trolls, is like your opinion doesn't really matter, like, and something's broken inside of you, but just don't even go there, man. Don't read the comments. Save yourself the heartache. That's my advice.
But now I probably absolutely will read the comments because you told me.
No, just see that there are some and send someone else in to like view them. But even the biggest stars, I watched something with Sandra Bullock where she was like, well, I Googled myself. That's something you never
Oh,
want to do. And I
yeah,
read the comments, and that's also something you never want to do. So you know what? It
yeah.
happens to the best of us, but don't read the comments.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
I appreciate you trying to help me make it make
Oh,
sense. I'm not sure that it makes any more, but we gave it the old college try. So I appreciate it.
yes. No, absolutely. I enjoyed it. Thank you
All
so
right.
much.
Thank you.
All
Talk
right.
soon.